Good evening. Good evening, everybody. It's Joe. I'm back here for the Thursday live stream. So glad that you're watching, whether here live or on the playback. I really appreciate you. Really appreciate it. We got some cool stuff to cover, as well as some annoying stuff to cover. Here's the thing. If you saw the thumbnail and title, so you're here wondering, sexist, right? Who's blaming people on sexist or being sexist, right? Who's doing all this nonsense? And there's also the common element of, like, every time this happens, people online seem to point this out. We talk about it, and I wanted to start this off by just saying that it's important we bring this to light, and it's important that we expose, in a lot of ways, this mentality, okay? Because Hollywood and the entertainment industry is so heavily dominated by one side, by one ideological point of view. And it honestly is it's toxic, right? As much as they say that the people online, the haters, you know what I mean? The critics are toxic incels. What's thing is, we know the truth. We know that the incels, the toxic people like me, we're just fans of stuff, and we don't like to see pretentious people ruin it. All the way from actors to writers to executives, we don't like to see that happen. I just want to point that out and say that criticism's important because we need to find ourselves back into the center of this movement, right, in Hollywood and entertainment. We need to find ourselves back in the center where we can essentially have good entertainment again, that the fans are respected again, that IPs are respected again. And tonight's opening topic involves Star Wars actor Daisy Ridley, right? So let's go ahead and jump into this. This is another case of Hollywood, specifically Daisy Ridley, blaming Star Wars fans for their failure, for fans not being into her movies. So we're talking about the Star Wars Daisy Ridley trilogy. All right. So she came out in a recent interview and she said the following. I'll just read this. During an interview with Premiere, Ridley was asked if she felt this violent reaction to Rey, right? And so they're referring to the online dislike and outrage over how poorly these Star Wars movies were, how badly they came out to be, and how a lot of legacy Star Wars fans did not like it. They automatically call this violent. They automatically call it, inciting of hatred and all that. And so this is Daisy Ridley's response. She says, "No, I know that some people have expressed themselves negatively, but I don't pay attention to it." Okay, so right off the bat, I'm not going to fault anyone for saying I'm not going to pay any attention to it. Okay, I don't have a problem with that. If she's like, look, I'm just an actor. I didn't write the script. I didn't write these stories. I'm just an actor trying to make money off of, a big deal, a big movie deal like Star Wars. She could just say, I don't pay attention to it because it's not directed at me. I don't believe this is directed at me as an actor, and the people who do direct it towards me, like, I'm just going to ignore it because those aren't the real criticisms. That's not the majority of criticism that these movies have received, is not directed at her. But I just heads up, it probably will be for a little while now because this statement's pretty bad. Ridley said, "Because it doesn't really concern me, I can't change the way some men see women." That's where she screwed up big time. She can't change, all right, the way men see women, the way some men see women. Unfortunately, that's how society works, Ridley explained. All right. So she's basically jumped right into this nonsense where she basically was kind of left silent. She hasn't said a whole lot of stuff publicly, but she goes out and she says something that makes a lot of sense. I don't pay attention to it. And then she says, I can't change the way some men see women. And so she's automatically making this about a sexist issue. And we all know, like Star Wars fans and movie fans in general, know this is not about a sexist thing because Star Wars had women in it, both in the sequel, both in the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. We didn't have any problem with those women. We don't have any problem with women in general. We don't even have a problem with women in action movies. And so it's so incredibly frustrating to hear time after time after time after time people in Hollywood receive criticism for making a crappy story, for not respecting the original timeline of events, the original trilogy, like in Star Wars. And then when it's poorly received, saying, oh, it's just because we had a leading woman. It's a sexist thing. Men hate women. And they're completely gaslighting the audience. They're completely gaslighting everybody on the internet with valid criticisms. They're completely gaslighting the entire fandom to basically say, oh, no, this isn't about, we made an incredible story. Our story's fantastic. Our story with, Daisy's character, Rey, and what we did with Luke Skywalker and what we did with Han Solo. Like we wrote an incredible story. That's what they say. All right. And they make any criticism about it just like this toxic sexism. They try to redirect you and gaslight the audience to say, you don't have valid criticisms. You're just sexist. That's what they're trying to do all the time. It's not just Star Wars. It's also like Rings of Power. It's also Marvel. Honestly, it's like mostly Disney, but there are a couple other studios that do it as well. And I want to just give an example of someone in Hollywood, a young girl. I don't know. She's a woman, but she's probably a few years younger than me. Who has made a comment about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, that I thought was very insightful, and I think gives us a clue onto how she approaches working in Hollywood, and I thought it was very insightful. This is Jenna Ortega, so take a listen.
Cool and shouldn't get a sequel. And Tim's like been very articulate about this. Like he was open to this for years if you got the story right and it happened in the right time, as you said. But like where are we at in other things? Like Edward Scissorhands, for instance, he said, just leave it alone.
Okay, so this guy's asking about Edward Scissorhands. Jenna Ortega is getting very popular both in Wednesday and the new Beetlejuice film, where she's working with Tim Burton a lot. And so the conversation comes up with, this guy's asking, could we see a female Edward Scissorhand? All right. He's asking to race swap. Like, would Tim Burton be open to race swapping Edward Scissorhand, Johnny Depp's character, and cast Jenna Ortega to play that character? So basically, she's like the new Tim Burton face. You had Johnny Depp was it for a while. There's been a handful. Winona Ryder's been in there. And then Jenna Ortega is the new face of Tim Burton films. And her response to this was very intriguing to me. And actually very political, but also fascinating. Listen.
Yeah. Like, do we feel like that? Like, that's like, if he called you up tomorrow and said, you know what, Edith Scissorhands is...
Edith, it's hilarious that he brought Edith Scissorhands. He pre-planned this analogy as well as this question because it's cringy. Who comes up with the word Edith Scissorhand? Just find a woman name and throw it in there. But he didn't just, that wasn't off the top of his head. That was pre-planned, right?
calling to me.
Yeah,
Jen,
that's good.
what would you say?
No, you know what I would say about that specifically as well? I love that there's a lot more female leads nowadays. I think that's so special, but we should have our own. I don't like it when it's like a spin-off of, like,
yeah,
I don't
it
want to
does
see,
have to
like,
be. And then she
Jamie
does the man-
Bond,
yeah,
you
right,
know?
right,
Like,
right,
I want to
right.
see
You want
just, like,
your own.
another badass. So,
Yeah.
yeah, something like that. Definitely.
Okay, so her point is that she doesn't want to see remakes, like repurposing for women, right? And in some ways, that's what Star Wars did with Daisy Ridley's character. They said, well, we've had traditionally like these Jedi men in place, so we need to let's insert a female character. Let's insert like a woman character. And it's very upsetting because it's not about sexism, but they do that so they have an out. What Jenna Ortega is basically saying here is that women would be in a much better position, women actors and fandoms, if they are creating unique IPs with women leads. So there's also the argument that like actions films and good dramas, like not just love stories, that women haven't been very respected, or they haven't been the stars, or haven't been loved by a lot of fandoms. And I just say that's incorrect, because I have a couple. I actually wrote down a few of like, I just wrote down 10 examples off the top of my head before I got going on this live to show you like some of my favorites. So like the Hunger Game trilogy, like that was not ever repurposed. That was originally a woman lead. That was great. Aliens. All right. Brave. I really like that animated film Brave. Salt with Angelina Jolie. The Devil Wears Prada. That's not an action film, but it is a woman. It is a story about a woman who's not only coming of age, but is learning new life skills. And it's a beautiful like drama. It's a wonderful drama. And it's not about a love story. It's about real life in New York and like the fashion industry. I thought it's engaging. Silence of the Lambs, Black Swan, Sicario. Don't get me started on Sicario with Emily Blunt. Awesome, incredible movie that Denis Villeneuve did. Prey, remember that one? That's a woman of color in Prey. I thought everyone loved it. Like, there are movies that exist and are successful with women leads. However, to make the argument to just say, and they're loved by men, by the way, me as the example right now, to just say that if you didn't like Star Wars, it's because you basically hate women on screen, and you can't change this toxic masculinity. No, like 100%, it is the writing, and it is the blasphemous nature and approach that the executives took to creating and rebooting Star Wars. That is what the problem is. And there's like this whole thing with the new director of like the next Rey movie that Star Wars has announced, with, I believe, like Charmin Obaid-Chinoy. I think that's how you say her name. They announced her directing. She's never directed like anything except documentaries about activism, right, in other countries. But they gave her a Star Wars movie for some reason. And she's already made comments a few months back, maybe it's been a year or so now, that like it's about time a woman leads Star Wars. It's like, have you been blind to Kathleen Kennedy? When Disney took it, they gave it to Kathleen Kennedy. The entire time Disney has had Star Wars, it's belonged to a woman. And so how many shows, how many movies, how many billions of dollars at this point have exchanged hands, and we're still blaming criticism of Disney Star Wars on toxic masculinity? When honestly, Jenna Ortega's right. Like, we're going to continue having this problem until people grab a hold of what she said and take it to heart. Because I've given you examples of original IP stories that I think are really well done films, and I like them. I like them as movies, and And I'll just say, like, if you're just going to take a well-known IP just because you think it's safe, right? Because there's a built-in audience, like, The Lord of the Rings, what Rings of Power is doing right now. If you're just going to try to capitalize on an existing IP and then do this whole thing where it's not about race swapping, it's not about gender swapping, what it's about is writing crap, truly telling crap, uninteresting stories, receiving criticism from the built-in audience, and then saying that they're sexist and racist. I'm sick and tired of this. Jenna Ortega's right. There's much more power in capitalizing on existing IPs that doing it respectfully, yes, but more so creating new stories with women as leads. You will find that men and everybody are very accepting and loving of new, interesting, well-told stories with women leads. It's not that we didn't want women to come in and like ruin Star Wars. Women, as I said, have been a part of Star Wars the entire franchise. Princess Leia, royalty, right? And yet they're just going to keep telling this sad and tired narrative that it's all because of racism. We saw it with The Acolyte. My goodness. Remember The Acolyte just a few months ago? Just completely, like, truly holding up a turd saying, this is a great turd, and if you say it's not great, like, this is holding up a turd saying it's a show, and then saying, if you don't like it, you are racist and sexist because we have women and women of color in this show. Like, that's exactly what we're seeing here with the trilogy. I would say the trilogy of Star Wars with Rey is better than The Acolyte, but when it comes down to it, they all fall short by miles from the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy. They just do. And so honestly, I think we need to keep pointing this out. We need to keep reiterating, because these Hollywood elites, they're just going to keep saying this stuff, like, and act like they don't have any repercussions for this. I'm sorry. Like, your reputation should take a hit if you spout off some nonsense like this and making accusations about the fan base that's fundamentally not true. And talk about dangerous rhetoric, going around calling an entire population and group of fandoms racist and sexist, like Star Wars has done the past few years. That's disgusting. I mean, it's pretty gross. It's pretty gross. And they should be called out for it. They should be fired. They should, like, not be allowed to act anymore in the industry because of how much damage. I mean, look at this. We see the same thing is going on with that girl, whatever her name is. I can't remember off the top of my head. That girl with Disney and Snow White. She's put her foot in her mouth a bunch. Just kind of seems like there's a lot of people in Hollywood that's just kind of popping off and saying nonsense things recently, and there doesn't seem to be any backlash on it. But I think it's important to point it out. I think we have to find our way back to the center before we'll actually see really good entertainment. And when we do see good entertainment, it's probably because people who are like politically or culturally agnostic are making a show to truly entertain people and have a creative storytelling expression. That's what I think. And this whole thing where she says, because it doesn't really concern me, I can't change the way men see women, making a generalization like that, that's not going to work. That's not going to work at all. Now, I need to shift gears. I got to shift gears because I've got a little wound up. And I want to actually talk about something that I really enjoy. All right. And it is cinematography. I've said it a bunch on this channel. Greg Fraser is the director, photographer, the cinematographer, right? And a lot of films that I've enjoyed, but he is by far my favorite cinematographer right now and has been for a few years now. He did things like Dune Part 1, Part 2, The Batman with Robert Pattinson. He's done not Sicario, that was Denis Villeneuve. He did Rogue One. He did the first season of Mandalorian. So he's done a lot of really great stuff visually. And I saw this video that I wanted to react to where he was talking, doing an interview about his favorite shots from some of his movies. Now, I'm going to bounce around a little bit in this video because it's like 14 minutes long. I'm not just going to sit and play the whole video, but I do want to talk about some of the films that I have seen. I haven't seen all of his movies. And so I want to talk about some of the films I have seen and hear his thoughts on it and kind of react to it. So let's get into this.
You know, punching Denis, going, this is amazing. A few things. Now, with a digital camera, just to get into the technicals, pretty much any digital camera shoots beautiful images if you expose the image properly and if you shoot it properly.
See, this video is not only going to be fun to hear his perspective on his own work, but just to get the nuggets of knowledge out of a video in an interview like this from Greg Fraser that he drops casually in conversations.
I knew on Zero Dark 30 was that we were going to be facing challenges that we were never going to have the opportunities to shoot things properly all the time. We were going to need a camera that was going to be able to kind of be in situations that weren't bulletproof. And my favorite shot in that film is actually one of the hardest technically to achieve. And it's the one that I tested my cameras on. And that's the scene where Jessica Chastain's character is coming into the first interrogation. You've got Retta, our actor, on the floor, strung up with ropes. And we're over Retta and the door opens. So it goes from almost pitch blackness to blown out highlight behind Jessica as she comes through that door. I mean, the shot in itself, I think, sums up a lot of things about the film as well, talking about.
That's really beautiful. He's right. To get the exposure correct to where the room becomes the correct exposure and it also goes to darkness and this contrast of light, that is it tells a story, and it's also very difficult to achieve. You have to do a lot of testing, and then when everyone's there on set, you don't have a lot of time to do a lot of testing. You have to hurry up and go, right? And so yeah, it's interesting that this is his favorite shot. Let's hear what he had to say about what this shot meant, right, for the film.
About kind of the horrors, but technically what I love about that is that I used that shot or that setup for that shot. Obviously I couldn't test that shot when I was testing in Hollywood because that was in Jordan, but I knew we were going to shoot that. And I knew because we'd scouted it. So I did these tests where I would be shooting the darkest interior in a test bay and the brightest Los Angeles sun outside. And I would see which cameras perform the best. And, the Arri Alexa just head and shoulders above any other comparable camera at that time.
That's really exciting. That's really cool. There's a part of me that just wishes that this guy would do like online classes. Like I would love to just like paid live streams where he would just like pay-per-view. I'm going to go live. I'm going to talk about cinematography. I'm going to answer questions, in chats and stuff. I would love to hang out with Greg Fraser virtually and just take in all of his thoughts around his work and his theories behind cinematography, because his brain is vast when it comes to knowledge about this. This is one that he talks about Rogue One, because again, he shot Rogue One, the iconic Vader scene, right? He's sharing some of his thoughts around Rogue One. So let's listen to this section.
Star Wars Rogue One. My most favorite shot in that film is the Darth Vader lightsaber coming on at the end of Rogue One.
This is probably the coolest moment in Star Wars history since the original trilogy. This one scene from Rogue One.
To me, I don't know. I still kind of get the chills when I watch that, and the magic's kind of lost a little bit with me being on set, creating a lot of these things, because it's me who remembers how much effort we went to figure out a way to make him backlit, even though the lightsaber's front lighting him, to make the lightsaber not light too much of Darth Vader, because Darth Vader front lit doesn't look as good as Darth Vader backlit. Like there's a whole series of tests that we did to really figure out how to make that scene work, how to make that introduction work. It's funny, the first time Gareth talked to me about that scene, because that scene occurred as a...
So he says Gareth. He's talking about, I believe, Gareth Edwards, who's the director. He also did the Creator film recently with John David Washington. And Greg Fraser assisted. I believe Oren Sofer was the main cinematographer on set for the Creator, and Greg Fraser was I don't think he was there for the whole thing, but he was also working on the cinematography for the Creator.
Pickup scene. The film was going to end a slightly different way, not fundamentally, but just the kind of the way they got to the end. You know, we shot a really great scene, and you know, for all I was aware, that was in the film. Gareth called me and said, "We've got an idea. Vader's in the ship. He's going to go gangbusters."
I couldn't imagine if I was a cinematographer for something like Rogue One, and they were like, "We're gonna bring back Darth Vader for just a scene, and it's going to be at the end of the film, and it's going to be the most epic thing since the trilogy. This is just nostalgia, Darth Vader stuff. Okay, that's what we're trying to capture here." I would be shaking in my boots if I had to get behind a camera and like craft out what the shots were going to be in the scene, what we're going to try to capture, how we're going to light it. I would be truly nervous to shoot something like this.
And I went, okay, cool. I mean, always, anytime Vader's on set, it's always a good day, right? So you kind of, you know, you're like, all right, great, good to shoot Vader again, you know, me buddy Darth. But I was a bit perplexed because we'd shot something really good. And I sort of expressed that to Gareth and said, okay, well, sure, of course. I don't quite understand why, but, you know, fair enough. He explained the scene, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool scene. But
it is a pretty cool scene, man. Gareth Edwards and Greg Fraser just knocked this scene out of the park.
Main thing was, it was a chance to really create an iconic Vader moment. You know, as iconic as Vader walking through the smoke in the door of A New Hope.
Right.
You know, that scene, this black figure in this white space. I mean, you can't get any more iconic than that. And it was our chance.
Look, that original, that is iconic. I think I prefer Greg Fraser's version in Rogue One. It's a bit more iconic in my mind.
To kind of try and create something that was iconic also. You know, I wouldn't say as iconic because nothing would be. That's really, we hold that up as our gold standard. But, you know, it's our chance to kind of create a Vader scene that had that level of sort of iconicness that people hopefully will watch years down the track and go, I want our thing to look like that.
That's exactly what I think. I mean, when I'm filming something, honestly, I've studied as much as I'm able to study Greg Fraser's cinematography in his movies. And I'm constantly analyzing. I got videos on this channel just talking about his cinematography because I think his approach is far more thoughtful than a lot of cinematographers I'm seeing, especially in the big studio. Like his approach to cinematography is heads and shoulders above anyone shooting for like Marvel or anyone shooting for any other Star Wars project right now. Like his cinematography in Rogue One was truly incredible. I didn't care for the story that much. The cinematography was awesome. And it's so much better cinematography than any other Star Wars project, except for maybe season 1 of The Mandalorian, which was also shot by Greg Fraser. I'm going to see what the next pieces are. I'm going to skip a couple. Some of these are some other films I haven't seen. So this is where he talks about Dune Part 1. I want to get into this a little bit where he talks about his favorite shot for Dune Part 1.
So Dune Part 1, favorite shot. You know, there's a few. You know, there's a few, but I'm gonna specify the shot that sums up that entire film for me, and that's when Paul first receives Face Full of Spice. I love the way Timothy looks in that, and I love Timothy's performance in that, and
I'm wondering. So I haven't watched this ahead of time. I've just skimmed through to see like what movies he's covered. So I'm curious. I'm going to think, what is it about this shot? Maybe it's something, it's got to be focused. He's already about to say it, I feel like, but maybe it's all because of the emotion out of Timothy Chalamet's face. Maybe it has to do something with the eyes. Maybe it has to do something with the back, the ambiance, right? Maybe that's why he likes it. I'm just guessing, right, to make it a little bit more fun. But let's see what he actually says.
Of the way that Joe and Denis have cut that in a way that it kind of it ages Paul. He seems to grow a few years, like he seems to age a few years at that exact moment. And I don't know if it's a combination of sort of being a little more weathered because of the sand on his face, but he feels like he's just kind of matured.
Denise pick
The little glimmers of spice, however they achieved that, it's awesome in this shot. It's truly awesome.
was from that same sequence. Is
Who are you?
sort of
The
man on the moon?
I guess this is his video.
Really hard to keep that camera nice and steady because it was lots of wind and stuff. It was a really hard one because obviously when you do footsteps, you can't go again easily because there are footsteps in the way. So you've got to clean the
I've thought about that. I've thought about that a lot, actually.
sand. You've got to really prepare it. And it was one of those scenes that, we didn't get many shots at, so everything had to work. The wind, the focus, the footsteps, the movement. So fun sequence to shoot.
The Batman. Now, I will say I've done a video on the Batman and the cinematography. So I'm not sure what his favorite shot will be, but I know a lot about the cinematography that went into this film based on what he's said in other interviews.
The Batman is a film I shot over the course of 3 years, with COVID. So, for me who normally does a film sort of 6-7 months and then moves on.
So he's doing volume. So people who don't know what the volume is, the volume technology, he's been kind of the pioneer cinematographer working with the volume. The volume is an LED building where the roof and the walls are just like either 180 degrees or 360 degrees of LED walls so they can project Unreal Engine, so like video game software worlds and landscapes, and make it look photorealistic. And it moves with the perspective of the camera. So the camera has a sensor on it. And when it looks at the wall, it's moving for perspective to be exact to what it would see in real life, right? As if the eyes were like looking around or moving its head, right?
I can kind of compartmentalize a film and kind of move on from it and change the style or change the look so that the next film's very different. The Batman I was living with for 3 years. The Batman was in my brain, in my visual cortex for 3 years. There's a couple I love in that film. The first introduction of our main character.
So he's got a couple shots he likes in the Batman. I do too.
Putting on his eye makeup. But I think my most favorite is the end of the movie. The Riddler has effectively realized that he has not succeeded in his journey. This
is an interesting shot because if you take a look at this, let's see, where was
the makeup? But I think my most favorite is the end of the movie.
The composition to the shots in the Batman is insane. It's so incredibly dirty. It is most of the film. If you go back and watch the Batman again, most of the film is we know it's extremely dark, but most of the time it's exposing the focus of the image in little windows of light. That's what this whole film is. And so as you can see, he's literally using a window where we just have a triangle shape and everything around the image is just dark. You can't see it. There's not even texture there. And you just see the focus of the emotion off of the Riddler's face. But we're just seeing it in this little triangular window inside of the actual window, like the screen, the full frame. So most of the cinematography in this film is truly impressive and fascinating. It's unique. It's one of the most unique cinematography cinematic films stylistically that I've ever seen. And maybe when he's saying he was living with it for 3 years, it's very possible that it looks the way it does because he spent so much time with it.
The Riddler has effectively realized that he has not succeeded in his journey. He's standing in prison. He's staring out the window,
Again,
wondering what's going on.
Just pockets, little windows of light, and it's not exposing the whole image. It's very fascinating and very engaging visually to look at.
And then a little voice comes in and has a chat to him.
Hey, don't be sad. You did so well.
I love the mood of that scene, and I love the fact that it sets up such an interesting arc for those characters, and it ends in a really sort of abstract way where we don't get to see those characters too clearly. It ends up being light, flare, darkness. It feels to me like a little bit like being underwater, except
that's really insightful. Being underwater, disorienting, but at the same time able to observe what's going on, right? It's suffocating. That's what it is. It's suffocating, right?
except being in prison. It was a low sun. And because of that, it allowed us the flexibility to be able to kind of create light and flare. We'd been in the prison a few times before. We'd been in, interrogation cell, and this needed to be a lot more unusual. So the concept effectively was to try and create something that was a little more, heavenly, something that was a little bit harder to kind of put a pin in and harder to read.
I like it. Brilliant choice. Now there is another, so this I think was done interview for Dune. So let's see. I believe he talks about Dune Part 2. I'm interested to hear this as well. So, I'll go on to my last segment, which is going to be a reaction after this. But let's do Dune Part 2.
Part 2 was a tough one because I lived and breathed like all of our collaborators on that movie, every single shot, every single day. But I think the one that really got my blood going in the cinema was during Paul's worm writing. I saw Denis' favorite shot on this, and it was really funny. I was like watching his interview like a fanboy, and
I will say I have heard him talk about this in another interview before, so I'm going to hear if he says anything else I can glean from that's new.
Funny because Denis' favorite shot is where Paul stands up. It's the shot behind him as he kind of gets his knee off the worm and then starts to stand up. My favorite shot was the one exactly after that, where he's standing up and it's on a long lens. It's shaking. And
I'm gonna be honest. When I watched it, that was one of my favorite shots too. The side profile movement with the worm of Paul riding. It's not probably my favorite shot of the whole film, but honestly, my favorite shot of the whole film might be Paul when he's raising his hand and he's giving the speech not on top of the mountain but underground with the Fremen, and you see the pockets of light coming in through the ceiling, and it shows how deep this cave goes, or this underground layer goes, and so it illuminates in little pockets of light how many people are actually there. And Paul is speaking to all of them, and he's like throwing his fist in there. It's one of the shots in that scene that I think probably sticks out to me the most.
And moving really quickly. I remember seeing that in the cinema for the first time. I saw the film with Denis, with full sound and everything, and I was high-fiving the air, like I was, punching Denis, going, "This is amazing!" With Hans' score and with everything, that was my favorite shot for that whole sequence. And it's still, every time I see it, even from when we shot it, I remember seeing it, on the monitor being shot, and I had the same reaction. So it hasn't lost any of its impact on me. That's
beautiful. Hasn't lost any of its impact on him, because when you get a good shot, it's a good shot, right? And I have not experienced the amount of joy that probably he's experienced, because I haven't put together a shot that comes close to anywhere of how brilliant his cinematics are. However, I have put together a handful of really beautiful, really, really dynamic and storytelling compositions with light and everything. And I get real excited about it. And I actually will sometimes just like take a picture of it on the monitor. And then that night I'll pull it up on the computer and I'll just make it full screen and I'll look at it. I'll be like, heck yeah, because it's exciting. It's like a form of creation. And the interesting thing is, back in the day, it used to live on film, like 35 millimeter. It was something physical you could hold that you're like, I used light and I captured this, right? With today's world, with streaming everything, it's all ones and zeros, digital, it is light sensors, but it's electronic pictures, motion pictures. And so everything is passing through this ones and zeros data center. And so we can view it on screens, but at the end of the day, it's not something I can hold. I can't like hold my shot. I can't hold my composition, my work. And at the same time, it still is exhilarating. Having to pull up a screen to show someone what my work looks like can feel weird. Especially, it kind of feels like, oh, I'm not working on stuff that's tangible, but you are. And I feel like back in the day, it could have just been like film, and you can like keep little pieces, little frames as souvenirs. But yeah, I get super excited when I come up with something really good as well. I think that would be really cool, actually. Like frame iconic, like actual film, like frames from iconic movies, or even my own stuff if I got it processed down to negatives and everything. That would be interesting. That'd be fascinating. I'd love to do that. Let me know in the comments if you guys knew about Greg Fraser, if you like his work, if you like the movies he's worked on. And tell me what your favorite shot or your favorite movie that we discussed in this video is. I'd love to hear and discuss with you all in the comments about Greg Fraser's work and the movies that he has been the cinematographer on. I got one more segment, and it's going to be a trailer reaction. So let's jump into it. Mickey 17. It's a new Warner Brothers film that I haven't heard anything about until I came across the trailer. It's a few weeks old at this point, I think, but I truly didn't see it until like today. So I'm going to do a reaction to it. I'm going to share my thoughts afterwards, my first reactions, my first impressions, critical analysis. So let's go ahead and watch it. Stick around until after, and let's jump into this.
Hi, Mickey. Are you experiencing any vertigo?
I guess I am feeling a little dizzy.
That voice.
Wow! Did you see that?
He just lose his hand.
I wouldn't be surprised if you're thinking at this point, what have I done?
How lucky can one guy be?
Nothing was working out, and I wanted to get off of Earth.
You're applying to be an expendable?
Yeah.
You read through the whole application.
Ain't that a kick in the head?
I should have read through it.
Once you die, we'll print a new version of your body.
My head keeps spinning.
They made me work my ass off on one mission after another.
Every time you die, we learn something new, and humanity moves forward.
Oh, man, he's alive. It's fine.
My life is gonna be
Vicky, it's not looking very good for you.
Yeah, no. I'm sure you're used to it by now, but what's it feel like to die? Even on my 17th go-around, I hate dying.
Oh. Twice.
Why aren't you dead?
He reprinted his body.
In the case of multiples,
It's just like.
we exterminate every individual.
Tell me quick.
Let's blow up these secondhand baloney boys.
Why don't you guys do rock, paper, scissors, and then we'll just shoot the loser.
Tell me quick. Oh, another kick. Tell me quick. Another kick in the head.
Mickey 18?
I don't like you. But I'm you. I'm not you. I'm gonna kill you.
Tell me quick. Another kick.
This is so exciting!
All right. My first impressions of that. Well, it's an interesting setting, first of all. So like space, travel, science experiments. It's always a fascinating setting. It doesn't feel like the same thing, but it kind of reminds me of that older Jake Gyllenhaal film, Source Code. it doesn't seem like exactly the same plot in any way, but just with the nature of a continued death, it's like source code a little bit. It seems like they're reprinting bodies, and for some reason they're able to maybe transfer his soul consciousness into a new body. And so it kind of leaves you with the conundrum, I guess, that's presented somewhat in this trailer. If they print a body when like too early or something, and so you got two duplicates. What do they call it? Multiples. They called it multiples in this trailer. And so you got to get rid of the multiples. You don't want to have more than one body around. And I guess they could just duplicate the consciousness into two different bodies. I don't know. The accent that Robert Pattinson is putting on is something brand freaking new. And I'm just going to dig in the knife because look, he's gotten a bad rap. He's gotten a bad rap since Twilight. But I've maintained, especially seeing him in other films, that he's actually a pretty good actor. And I liked him. I liked him as a brooding kind of Batman. And I didn't really have a big problem with him. I think he does a good job communicating emotionally what his character's feeling. This seems like it's a whole nother version of acting that is going to allow him to be able to maybe bring some more people in and realize that he's actually got some chops, right? That accent does not sound like it should be coming out of his mouth, but it does. And I can't say off of this trailer that I'm really excited about this movie, all right? It's a new story. I applaud that. I applaud for them trying something new from what I understand and not just like doing another sequel, prequel, or remake or something. Trying a new story. And Warner Brothers is pretty good at that. Trying something new. I applaud it. I want them to keep doing it. And I will watch this, but I can't say I'm like super excited for this. And the nature of it, it's not really a hype trailer. It's kind of like this is the general principle of the story. It's a little bit lighthearted from the music, from the action on screen, what they chose from the movie to include in this trailer. It seems like it's not a very serious film, but it's in a setting that feels serious. But it also seems like it's not taking itself very seriously. Maybe I'm onto that. Maybe I'm onto something there with the feels serious. It looks serious cinematically. Everything implies that this is a serious film, but it ultimately is not. And so I don't know. Maybe that's something around the director, the producer. Maybe there's something in that with the messaging of the film. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Have you heard of Mickey 17? Are you thrilled about this? You interested in this at all? And are you planning on going to the theaters to watch this movie? Or are you just going to wait for streaming? I'm curious to hear what you have to say. Leave it in the comments. I'd love to talk and interact with you and see the opinions there. And that's a wrap. That's all I got for you tonight on this live. Really appreciate it. Everybody who popped in, that was here while I was live, or if you're watching on the replay, really am grateful for you. I'll be live again on Thursday, Lord willing, to do our final review of the Rings of Power, Season 2, Episode 8. We're going to see how they try to wrap up this mess. So join us around this time on Thursday for the review of that final episode. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and I'll see you next time.